Theodore Roosevelt was the most badass president ever. Actually, he must have been the most badass man in history, period. Before he became president, he was a cowboy, an amateur boxer, historian and taxidermist, a police commissioner, a soldier, a sportsman, a politician, and an explorer all rolled into one ball of bounding energy as he raced through his days and outdid everybody at everything. Today, we're taking a look at some of old teddy bear's most insane facts. But before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe. There is a famous quote from Roosevelt. He used to say that never throughout history has a man who lived a life of ease left a name worth remembering. As a child, Teddy had poor vision and was stricken with life-threatening asthma. So his father handed him a pair of glasses and told him when his ailments kept him from keeping up with other kids of his age that you have the mind, but you do not have the body. And without the help of the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should. You must make your body. Young Roosevelt took the advice to heart and dove into a range of sports, hiking and hunting. He became strong and was able to fight off bullies with pure force. After graduating from Harvard in 1880, he went into New York State politics. But after losing his wife and mother on the very same day in 1883, Teddy went west to the Dakota Badlands and became a cowboy. TR spent the next few years running a cattle ranch on the plains and used that time to learn to hunt, ride, and rope. Along with working with more seasoned individuals, he also developed his toughness. He claimed that they removed the snob from him and declared that, "I would never have been president if it had not been for my experiences in North Dakota." He would look back on his time in the West as one of the most significant eras of his life. Over the next few years, Teddy would work so hard that he forgot all about losing his family. In 1886, he became a deputy sheriff. He once raced through a frozen river after 3 crooks stole one of his boats. Instead of letting them get hanged, he transported them to the town of Dickinson and handed them over to the law for a trial after a trip of a straight 40 hours. Roosevelt remained awake the entire time, keeping a close eye on the robbers with his inevitable Winchester rifle. Roosevelt was the inspiration for every single cowboy out of a John Wayne movie. He loved action. He would always say, "Get action. Do things. Be sane. Don't fritter away your time. Create, act, take a place wherever you are, and be somebody." TR came back east in the winter of 1886 and quickly climbed the political ladder. Eventually, he was appointed the New York City Police Commissioner. He did the job just as he did every other job. He took a place and became somebody. He had significant impact as he whipped political bosses, fought against the corrupt police force, and scared officers as he'd walk through the streets in the middle of the night, making sure they weren't out drinking or sleeping on the job. His late-night strolls proved to be so popular that reporters started to follow him everywhere, which inevitably led to mass paranoia among slackers in the force. Few of Theodore Roosevelt's other life achievements attract the public's attention as readily as his military duty as a Rough Rider during the Spanish-American War. Throughout the 1890s, American interest in Cuba's independence increased as newspapers demonized Spanish authority. Roosevelt had the strongest support for Cuban independence. He beat the war drum and readied the Navy for war with Spain in his capacity as Assistant Secretary of the Navy, a position he attained in 1897. The USS Maine battleship was sent to the Havana harbor where it mysteriously exploded, killing 262 US sailors. Everybody believed it was a Spanish act of war at the time. War was declared shortly after. As soon as he could, Roosevelt resigned from his position as Assistant Secretary of the Navy and formed a volunteer regiment to fight. The most famous of all the units fighting in Cuba, the Rough Riders, was the name given to Theodore Roosevelt's 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry. The original plan for this unit called for men from New Mexico, Arizona, and Oklahoma to fill it. However, once Roosevelt joined the group, it quickly became a haven for a diverse range of troops, from Ivy League athletes to Glee Club singers to Texas Rangers and Indians, all men Roosevelt had once met in his vast travels. Unlike many other volunteer companies, Roosevelt and the unit's commander, Colonel Leonard Wood, trained and supplied the men so well at their camp in San Antonio, Texas, that the Rough Riders were allowed to fight. They arrived in Tampa at the end of May and set sail on June 13th for Santiago de Cuba. They joined the 5th Corps, another highly trained, well-equipped and enthusiastic group comprised of excellent regular army and volunteer soldiers. On the 1st of July 1898, the Rough Riders charged up Kettle Hill during the Battle of San Juan Hill. Roosevelt charged up straight into enemy fire on the only horse as he personally led the charge. They were victorious, of course, but only after a loss of 200 killed and over 1,000 wounded. The Battle of San Juan Hill became legendary as a result of Roosevelt and the Rough Riders' heroic deeds and long after reenactments. It garnered huge media attention. For Roosevelt, this he claimed was the greatest day of his life. He had always romanticized war and gloried to be in it. He had a bloodlust. With a revolver taken from the wreck of the Maine, he shot and killed a Spaniard. He doubled up as neatly as a jackrabbit, he wrote. Ever since the war, the public gave him the nickname, the Colonel. Roosevelt returned home as a national war hero. He was then elected governor of New York in 1898 and later vice president of the United States in 1900. Roosevelt, who was elected alongside William McKinley, resented his powerless position. All this changed when McKinley died on September 14, 1901, after being shot by an assassin. Roosevelt became the youngest president ever, having taken office 6 weeks before his 43rd birthday. Despite promising continuity with McKinley's policies, he immediately transformed the office's public image. He renamed the executive mansion the White House and invited cowboys, prize-fighters, explorers, writers, and artists to stay. His refusal to shoot a bear cub on a hunting trip in 1902 inspired a toy maker to name a stuffed bear after him, and the teddy bear craze quickly spread across the country. Roosevelt delivered speeches to raise public awareness about the nation's role in world politics, the need to control the trusts that dominated the economy, railroad regulation, and the impact of political corruption. Over the previous century, there had been much talk about building a canal between the two oceans in Central America. While these guys were talking, Roosevelt went and got her done in Panama. He even manned a steam shovel himself. In dealing with major powers outside the Western Hemisphere, Roosevelt displayed the soft-spoken, sophisticated side of his diplomacy. He was concerned about Russian expansionism and the rising Japanese power in Asia. He worked to end the Russo-Japanese War in 1905. He mediated peace between Russia and Japan, earning the Nobel Prize for Peace in doing so. He was named the greatest herder of emperors since Napoleon. After leaving office in 1909, Roosevelt set out on a safari to Eastern Africa with his son Kermit. TR and Kermit killed 512 animals themselves. Many of the animals collected by Roosevelt were donated to scientists or used as taxidermy specimens for the Smithsonian Institution. The safari was officially known as the Smithsonian Roosevelt African Expedition and included a group of explorers in addition to Roosevelt and his son. The total collection surpassed the Roosevelt's 512 animals, totaling more than 11,000 specimens. When Roosevelt returned from this lengthy expedition, which lasted almost a year and a half, readers were captivated by both the former President Roosevelt and his destination, which was a popular topic in the press. Upon returning to the States, Roosevelt found himself hating his successor administration. Although TR had personally picked and trusted William Taft to carry on his policies, Taft went his own way. Despite saying he wouldn't run for a third term, Roosevelt created his own political party, the Progressive Bull Moose Party, and ran in 1912. On his way to give a speech one day, a man named John Schrank fired a Colt 38 pistol at Roosevelt's chest. However, Teddy survived, of course. It takes more than that to kill a bull moose. The rolled-up speech and metal eyeglasses case in his jacket pocket slowed the bullet. He went to the hospital only after finishing the speech, where doctors discovered the bullet was still lodged in his ribs. The bullet remained within him for the rest of his life. During the election, Roosevelt destroyed the Republican Party, but let Woodrow Wilson and the Democrats get in. After his final presidential election loss, which left him devastated, he embarked on another insane adventure. TR set off on an expedition down the River of Doubt, an unexplored river in South America that was home to anacondas and piranhas, accompanied by his son Kermit and renowned explorer Colonel Candido Rondon. The mission didn't go well. They encountered cannibalistic tribes and came perilously close to losing 5 of their 7 canoes. In the rapids, one sailor perished and another was killed. Teddy injured his leg while attempting to cross the river and free 2 stranded canoes. His wound caused an infection, which in turn brought on a fever. He urged his son to leave him behind as he was on the verge of death. But Kermit refused. He finished the journey 60 pounds lighter than he began. He returned even more a legend. When World War I broke out, he offered to raise another division of Rough Riders to go to Europe, but was turned down by President Wilson. Theodore Roosevelt died in his sleep on January 6, 1919, at his Long Island home. Death had to take Roosevelt sleeping, for if he had been awake, there would have been a fight. Did we miss anything? Let us know in the comment section.